Welcome everybody, my name is Niclas Huschenbeth and I'm excited to show you today the game Viswanathan against Magnus Carlsen from the 4th round of the Grenke Chess Classics. So the first time those two play against each other again after the World Championship match last year in Sochi, and you would maybe expect Viswanathan to try to take revenge for his loss in the match. So Anand with white, Carlsen for the second time with the black pieces. He just experienced a loss in the 3rd round with the black piece against Arkady, so we will see how he coped with that. Alright, let's have a look. D4, just like Anand played in the World Championship match in all of his games. And F5, this was probably a surprise to Anand. Carlsen doesn't play the Dutch defense that often, and actually the last time he played it was in Viswanathan C this year when he lost against Wojciech. G3, knight f6, bishop g2, e6, c4, and now Carlsen plays the stone wall. We see it here. This pawn structure of black is categorized as the stone wall. Why is it called the stone wall? Because the black position is really difficult to break through. Because as you can see, he has put his pawns on d5 and f5 and they are controlling the center. So it's really difficult to break through in the center. On the other hand, of course, there are also drawbacks. Because black has the control over center and has put his pawns here, he also has weakened the square on e5. And this is the major drawback of this opening. White is always having a beautiful square on e5 for his knights. Okay. And actually it's not an opening you see that often at the top level, but still it is not easy to refute. And it can be played. b3. There's a common setup. b3 is not only having the idea to develop the bishop to b2, but also actually to exchange the dark squared bishops with bishop a3, and that's exactly why Carlsen prevents this by playing queen e7. Now there are different options for white. Anand plays knight e5. Another idea is to play bishop b2 and then to once again prepare the exchange of bishops with bishop a3. Just takes a lot of time, and I think black is doing fine here too. Okay, knight e5, castle. Knight e2, you can see already the second knight is going to f3 to support the knight on e5. And now Carlsen plays a really rare move. He plays a5, but seems to be a reasonable move. But there was nothing wrong with the standard move here to play b6, then develop the bishop to b7, play the knight to d7, and it's really an harmonious setup. For example, most played move here is c takes d5, e takes d5, knight d3, bishop b7, let's say bishop b2, knight bd7, and I think black's absolutely fine here. He has the option to play with c5 at some point, the rooks go to c8, maybe e8 or d8, and at some point black will play c5. This is one of his main ideas, and then he has also kind of a nice square on e4. It's not as nice as a square on e5 because after all eventually the knight could be attacked, but still it's always an option black has. Let's go back to a game. Carlsen chooses a different plan. He plays a5, bishop b2, knight bd7, queen c2, and now a4. He just wants to put this pawn in here, cause some troubles, maybe with the idea to advance, maybe with the idea to open the a file, just to give something white to worry about. Knight d3, supporting a knight on e5, knight e4, and now Anand played e3. It's a reasonable move, but I think it would have been more sensible to play rook ac1, so he could play the bishop back to a1 if black plays a3 like he did in the game, and the bishop feels more natural on a1 than on c3. Also rook seems to be on a good square on c1. So I'm not quite sure if e3 is a move which is necessary at this point. Okay, e3, a3, bishop c3. Now knight takes e5. Knight takes e5. White wants to keep the square for his pieces, so he takes back with the knight. And now notice black doesn't really want to give up this bishop. This bishop is really essential to dark squared bishops, because you can see all the, well, not all of the black pawns, but most of them are placed on the white squares. That means that all the dark squares are weakened, and this is actually also one of the, another drawback. Usually this bishop is a problem because it doesn't find really something to do, and we'll come back to it later. So Carlsen plays bishop d7. Actually, we'll come to that, back to that now, because Anand took now on d7, and this is really a surprising positional decision, because as I said, this bishop is kind of not having much to do, and the knight is obviously stronger than the bishop. I assume Anand had this specific idea to play with c5 like he did in the game, but I don't think it gives him any edge. So he had two alternatives here. First, I think very appealing is to play f3, kick the knight out, and black probably takes on c3. Now if he goes back, now it's a different story. White can play c5 and is doing very fine here. And so probably black takes, queen takes, and now, well, white is going to play c5, and he is pretty much playing against this bishop. And I think it's a really comfortable position, risk-free for white, and I'm surprised Anand didn't go for that. Or alternatively, instead of that, there's also the option of the awkwardly looking move bishop e1, but the idea is simply to keep the bishop and to prepare f3 in the next move. There was another option. Bishop e8, which is kind of funny. Black plays the same move, which is actually a very natural route to activate the bishop, to give him some kind of job, put him on h5. But now f3, knight f6, oh well. White is still having this option sometimes to play with c5, and it's just a normal position. And I don't see why it was necessary to exchange this beautiful knight on e5 against this bishop on d7. I don't think that was a good decision. Okay, queen takes, now c5, bishop c7, b4. Now h5. What's going on here? Carlsen wants to play h4 and possibly put some pressure on the white king. And it's also aimed against the idea of f3, because if white plays f3, then it's easier to attack this pawn on g3. Okay, so Anand played bishop e1 to prepare f3. But now, after a bishop moved away from this diagonal, suddenly the move e5 is possible, a breakthrough in the center. And here I think Anand made another wrong decision. He took on e5. I think he should have played f3 instead. And after knight goes back to f6, now bishop goes back to c3. And black probably plays e4. If he takes on d4, well, white can take back with the bishop, and it's a very nice bishop on d4. And after e4, white has to play f4, but it's okay. And this position is, as you can see, pretty much absolutely closed, and I would expect a draw here. I mean, still there is some play. Both sides have some options. White can maybe look into b5 at some point. Black can maybe prepare g5. Still some play here, so not that clear, but I believe this should, in most cases, end in a draw. Okay, instead, d takes e5. Of course, bishop takes e5, rook d1. Now there's a threat of taking twice on e4 because the pawn is pinned. So if black was to play a random move, let's say bishop b2, then this would be possible because the queen is not protected on d7. So Carlsen played the queen out of the way, queen e6, and the queen is quite nicely placed on e6 because the queen is also a little bit aiming already against the pawn on a2, which is actually the main problem here for white, as we'll see in the game very shortly. f3, knight f6, bishop h3. It seems like Anand is putting some pressure on the black position. Black is defending, but actually everything is working here, and now Anand played e4, but it's getting more and more difficult. I think maybe bishop c3 back would have been a better option, even though black is still more comfortable here. He can put some pressure against the pawn on e3, but overall it's still roughly equal, and white should be able to defend. e4 looks very appealing to open the position in this fashion for the two bishops. Two bishops always like open positions with long diagonals where they can be effective, but here it turns out that Carlsen has this very strong move bishop b2, and now we see what I meant with that the pawn on a2 is the white problem, because if this pawn falls like it does in the game, then suddenly black is having this super strong pawn on a3, which is far advanced and obviously already supported by the rook and by the bishop, and it's pretty much unstoppable. So this is the problem here, and white is not having a good option to defend the pawn, because, well, this pawn is suddenly also attacked because the bishop moved out of the way. Queen takes e4 is another threat. So if queen b1, then just queen takes e4 and black is up a solid pawn. So Anand played e takes f5, but now Carlsen grabs this pawn, and there's an immediate threat of bishop d4 check, winning the queen on c2. So white has to react. He cannot take on g6. Bishop f2 is another inaccuracy here by Anand. He should have played rook f2, but already in a practical game this is very unpleasant. Obviously you're playing against a super strong pawn on a3, and this is not something you would like to have. But it seems that here white is able to exchange the pawn on a3, and he is just a little bit worse. Knight d5, f6, king f7, and now, for example, white could exchange everything here, and we would reach this endgame where black could still press a little bit with his active pieces, and pawns a little weak here on b4, but overall white is close to equality. Anand played the natural move bishop f2, also preventing bishop d4. But now g5, good move to keep everything closed. Obviously, as the king is a little bit exposed, you don't want to open up the position in front of your king. So g5. And here, rook fe1. Yeah, I can just repeat myself already, it is pretty difficult. And bishop g2 was another move, queen f7, now bishop d4. You just have to get rid of this bishop on b2. I mean, if black keeps the bishop like that, and there's really nothing which will stop a2, a1. So get rid of the bishop, but still, I mean, in all these positions black has really good chances. Even though a computer might say it might be still defendable, I think in a practical game it's very difficult. Okay, let's go back to the game. Rook fe1, queen f7. The queen frees the way for the pawn, just only 2 squares away from queening. Rook e6, knight g4, and then took on g4, played rook g6, King h7, and here he made the decisive mistake, but as mentioned before, already in a difficult position. He played rook d7, and we will get to this in just a moment, but it's a losing move. He should have played rook e6 back, which is already a difficult move to play. Just came from there, now we gotta go back. Well, the idea is now to play f6, but still, for example, rook fe8, rook e d6 now. This, by the way, those are computer suggestions, but it makes sense, because if you played rook e d6 immediately, then this pawn on f5 would be just hanging. So rook e6 first, rook fe8, rook e d6, king g8. Once again, white is exchanging the bishop on b2, but once again, this is super uncomfortable for white. But that was the only way to stay in the game, pretty much. Okay, let's see what happened here. Rook d7. White is giving up a whole rook. What was his idea? To play f6 and have some ideas here to play discover check with the rook, but it just doesn't work. Black has a very nice counter here. He has several moves actually, but Carlsen finds the best way. Beautiful deflection of queen with the queen. Give up the queen completely, but Black gets the other rook, and he has two rooks now for the queen, which is already an equivalent, but still this pawn. And like I said before, what is going to stop this pawn? And indeed, nothing can stop it here. And the game concluded after queen d3 check, king h6, h4, and g takes h3. And white is not able to develop any counterplay or any attack against the black king in time. Say queen d7, just rook takes f6, and yeah, there's just nothing there. This bishop is controlling everything, and once again a2, a1 is coming. All right, so Carlsen bounced back with this win, with this convincing win against Viswanathan. Very clear game. I mean, Anand just made, I think, some positional misjudgments here. First taking this bishop on d7, and then allowing black to have this bishop on a long diagonal, which in the end pretty much helped black with his pawn on a3 to win the game. And then in a crucial phase, really, when it came down to complications, Carlsen always found the best moves, and this really what makes him so strong, that in most situations he finds the best moves. Alright, let me know how you like this analysis. Let me know if you have any questions, just post them below, and then I'll see you soon. Bye.